let's talk about collecting mint on card or sealed figures versus loose figures. There are pros and cons to each, and I'm going to cover each aspect of that because, as you can see, I collect a lot of mint on card and sealed G.I. Joe stuff, but I also collect loose figures. One aspect of collecting mint on card figures is cost. Now, back whenever I was buying a lot of these, the cost wasn't too terribly bad. You could get a nice, like say, Python Patrol officer carded in really good condition. I paid like $60 for mine. I've been seeing these go for double and triple that lately. It depends on the buyer. It's auctions or buy it now prices or whatever. If the buyer is a collector that needs that one specific figure, then I mean obviously they're going to pay whatever they have to get it. But mint on card collecting is definitely costly. Even some of the Pursuit of Cobra figures are going for nearly $100 at times, and just depending on how many were made, how many were available in stores, and who all wants those. But cost is definitely a factor with collecting mint on card. Honestly, it's getting to the point now where I still find deals on sealed figures, but the prices are just getting a lot higher than what I really want to pay for some of these figures. Collecting loose is more cost effective, but again, I prefer mint on card. But there are reasons for that. One reason that I prefer mint on card, and others as well, is the artwork. I enjoy having the original artwork of the packaging with the figure. It's more of an aspect to displaying these figures, having the original artwork of the packaging with the figure. Another aspect of collecting sealed and mint on card is nostalgia. Some of these vintage figures, if you remember, back in the day, you'd go into Walmart or Hills or whatever store you were buying your toys at, and your card, the carded figure on the shelf would have a price sticker from that store on the card. That's something that I like to see on a vintage mint on card figure, is a price sticker from the store where it was originally sold. That's part of the nostalgia. It brings back fond childhood memories of going into those stores and getting to pick out those figures. Now, there's also another subset of collector that enjoys buying mint on card figures for the purpose of opening them so that they have a factory minty fresh figure. I'm not an opener, but I understand why other people would enjoy that. Again, that comes back to the nostalgia aspect of it. There is a desire amongst most collectors to have the absolute most factory mint fresh figure that you can possibly have. And by that I mean with all of its original accessories, no paint wear, no issues, no loose limbs, no playware. People want to have a dead mint figure to have on display or in their collection. That goes back to some people buying mint on card examples or sealed examples to open. There's another subset of sealed figures that I see pop up once in a great while, like maybe on eBay, and it's one. Other collector communities call them cut cards, but it's the figure and bubble sealed on a portion of the card that's been completely cut off. Like you would have the figure bubble here, the card would be completely cut off all the way around the figure, and all you would have is this little section of a sealed figure, somewhat like the size of a driver bubble. The reason for that, a lot of people's parents would buy these figures and use them as stocking stuffers. Well, a full-size carded figure wouldn't fit into a stocking, or it would take up a lot of space. and they would just cut everything off and throw it away. It was packaging. They didn't care. They didn't think anything about it. In my opinion, those would make the best openers. Now, some mint on card collectors prefer or chase after that perfect case fresh looking card. I used to do that at times, especially whenever I was buying figures in the stores off the shelf. I would look for the card that was absolutely perfect. I didn't want any shelf wear. I didn't want any problems with the card at all. But as of late, I honestly kind of look for stuff that has a little bit of shelf wear to it. And not in stores, not for new production stuff like Transformers. Like I'll skip over these guys if the boxes are dented or dinged up, because these are new. There's no reason for there to be any problems with it. They haven't seen any travels. It's not like I'm buying them in the secondary market. But some of the vintage G.I. Joe stuff, I kind of like to see a little bit of travel on the packaging. I like to see department store stickers. I like to see where this thing has been sitting around. Now, I don't want a yellowed bubble or a yellowed figure. I'm not going after that. But if the card has a couple veins, or if the card has like a little bit of rough corners to it or whatever, you know, I'm gonna buy it. One, I'll get it cheaper. Two, it shows a little bit of age, and it shows this thing's original. And three, it just it adds a little bit of character to it. I'm not collecting these as an investment to sell. A lot of people, that's mainly what they're after. They're looking for an investment to sell, but I'm not collecting mint on card or sealed as an investment to sell. It's purely nostalgia, the artwork, and etc. for me. And having like the most factory fresh mint figure that I can possibly have means that it's still going to be sealed. Moving on to collecting loose figures. Loose figures. A loose figure is a figure that is not in the original packaging. There are several factors that go into why people like collecting loose, and I'll explain some of those reasons for myself as well. There is, of course, the nostalgia aspect to collecting loose figures, like this Tiger Force Dusty. This is mine from when I was a kid. I got this new. I tore apart the packaging. I opened him up and played with him and his accessories and all the Cobras and everything, and would have big, huge battles and whatnot. Now, this figure doesn't really have any loose joints or anything. He's in good shape. Little to no paint wear. But he does need a new O-ring. His O-ring is pretty loose. And that's another aspect of collecting loose figures as well that I'll get to here in a minute. But nostalgia, I can still play with this figure. I can pose him. I can make displays with this figure. I can do things with this figure that you can't do with a mint on card or sealed figure. That's a big aspect for a lot of loose collectors, is being able to relive, I don't want to say relive their childhood, but an aspect of it is to bring back fond memories from when they were younger. A lot of those fond memories from when they were younger involved playing with G.I. Joes. You know, I know collectors out there that that became collectors as adults whenever they ended up picking up a loose figure at a yard sale or a thrift shop or a toy store or whatever. And hey, you know what? I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed playing with these. I think I'm going to buy some of them. And then all of a sudden, they've got a box full of them. And then they're like, you know what? I'm collecting these. Some loose collectors have a desire to have the most mint loose figure they possibly can. This figure, the only little spot of paint wear that this figure has, or play wear, will be right here on the knife. You can see there's a little mark there on the side. And that could come from anything. That could come from back whenever I was playing with this as a kid, or from packaging or whatever. But you know, this is a figure that a lot of loose collectors would desire because he is so mint. His elbows aren't cracked. He's got no issues at all, no cosmetic issues. Now, other loose collectors will buy beater figures. They'll buy a bunch of figures that are in less than mint condition and either customize them or use them for play, or use them to play with their kids, get their kids into it. They'll use them for photo shoots outside, or they'll buy a bunch of, instead of buying one mint figure, they'll buy a bunch that are less than mint. They'll take the best pieces, and I've done this before too, with collections that I've bought. They'll take the best pieces and they'll combine them together to make the best looking single figure that they possibly can out of all these different parts. I've done that before with collections that I bought. It was fun. It's a tinkerer's hobby. I think that loose figures are a tinkerer's hobby. There's an aspect of collecting loose figures that involves a lot of repair. You have the main assembly component being the screw in the back, because the screw in the back is what holds the torso together. The O-ring is looped around a section of the torso that is held together by the screw. So, taking a figure apart and replacing pieces of it, that's the tinkerer's hobby aspect. A lot of people really enjoy taking these guys apart and either kit bashing them to make new figures out of the parts, or replacing pieces of them. It's something that I've enjoyed before. Not really so much anymore, but the assembly aspect of it. A lot of people have this joy of putting something together, or disassembling and reassembling something to make repairs to it. And these O-rings, hey, check it out. I knew that was going to happen. I saw the separation in the O-ring right there, right where it broke. I expected it to break. That's not a problem. But this is a figure that is still in good shape. He's got a broken O-ring. The broken O-ring is easy to replace, and I'll get him fixed up with a new O-ring and he'll be good as new. Another aspect of collecting loose figures that differs from collecting mint on card figures is that you have to make sure you have the accessories if you want a complete figure. And that means that if you have a loose figure with no accessories, it becomes a hunt. It is a hunt to find the correct accessories for this figure. It's a hunt on eBay, Facebook, other social media platforms. Buying lots of accessories, like buying a box of accessories on eBay and going through them and sorting them, and that's part of the hobby. That's part of the enjoyment that people get from it, is that the hunt. Once the thrill of the hunt is gone, a lot of people stop collecting. Like for this guy, the Python Patrol Trooper, I believe that he came with I have all of his accessories, but I believe that he came with a rifle and a backpack. Pretty easy to find. They're pretty common accessories, but if I were to have him just as the loose figure, I'd want to find those, and I would be searching online to make sure exactly what accessories went with this figure, and then I would start the hunt for the correct accessories themselves. Now, this guy, being a loose collector, now I'll also say that I've seen this happen on figures that are sealed in the package, and it's because the elbow joint is made from a different type of plastic. But you'll see, if I can get it to focus in on him here, you'll see that his elbows have cracks on the inside, and they almost always crack in the exact same spot. But it's just when this plastic ages, I think that it dries out or something, maybe. I don't know, but it cracks. Some people don't consider this to be a cosmetic defect in a loose figure or a sealed figure. Other people do. Now, when this plastic ages, some pieces are prone to breakage. One of the things that I've seen is with people using Figure stands. I've seen figures. I've never personally had this happen. I've broken a heel, but I've never personally had this happen. A figure on a shelf, and all of a sudden the heel explodes. And it's just because of pressure on brittle aging plastic. You're talking about stuff that's, 30, 40 years old. As I demonstrated with the Dusty figure, those O-rings, they're made of rubber. They dry rot. They get old. That O-ring is the original O-ring from 1988. And, that's a long time for a piece of rubber like that, a little thin, what's basically a rubber band, to last and not just disintegrate. And that's really what this one did. I mean, I could probably take this and just this is that O-ring. Let's go ahead and try it. We'll pull it, and it just comes apart. Not the worst I've seen. This one still has a little bit of elasticity, but it's pretty loose. I've seen some so dry rotted that they just crumble apart. The O-ring is definitely one of those pieces. I've also seen photos that people have posted of loose figures that they've had displayed on shelves that, they say they walk through their house one day and they see this mess in a case where a figure has just popped his O-ring and fell over. And I saw a picture someone posted the other day where it had happened to two of them at once. And, they just spontaneously, and the figure just came apart. Now, it's not broken. It can be fixed. But it's still the fact that this aging material, it's something that you'll have to be wary of, and it's something that has to be maintained. So in my discussion of mint on card versus loose, I think that I've covered plenty of pros and cons with each. But one of the things that is a major topic of discussion in the community is reproduction. Some people are for it, some people are against it. I'm not going to express a stance of either side in this video. I'm just going to explain something is good, something is bad. One thing with collecting loose and even collecting mint on card is that you got to watch out for reproduction stuff. If you're not okay with it and you don't want it in your collection, it's something to be wary of. You want to be aware of exactly what is original and what's reproduction, and there are some telltale signs. I'm not going to cover those in this video, but like the two Cobra Commanders that I have hanging back here, these guys right here and here. One of those is a 1982 straight arm Cobra Commander, and one of them is a 1983 swivel arm Cobra Commander. Both of those are on reproduction card backs. There's also a card back that looks like that for the Mickey Mouse Cobra Commander. The Mickey Mouse Cobra Commander was not released on a card back like that. It's a custom. There's a big difference between reproduction and custom. But if you look on the back, and I only have a few reproduction card backs. I've got one for an 85 Snake Eyes. I've got one for an 82 straight arm Scarlet, and the Cobra Commander. And that's really the only reproduction card backs that I have. I'm okay with having those for display. I'm not going to try to sell them or anything. But the big fear is that people will try to pass off reproduction parts as originals. It's happened before in the past. If you're okay with having reproduction stuff in your collection, and it's just an impossible piece to find, whenever you're hunting for some of these accessories for loose figures, whenever you're hunting for these, you'll end up finding that some of these are nearly impossible to obtain. Some of the accessories, because they were so easily lost or broken, and they demand a very high price. And if you're collecting loose figures because of the cost savings over packaged figures, or like original factory sealed figures, paying a real high price for one of those one accessory might be an issue to you. And if you're okay with it, Some people will go for the reproduction option if they can't find what it is that they're looking for. Another big debate that I see come up a lot is O-ring and vintage versus modern. A lot of collectors prefer the O-ring construction of the vintage figures, and they completely shun the idea of a modern figure, which is not constructed with an O-ring. And again, you saw what an O-ring is when I broke one earlier. But yeah, I collect both. I like modern because of the detail, and I like vintage O-ring because of the nostalgic playability. Oh, here's another one that's probably going to end up with a broken O-ring. This is a Baroness, and her O-ring's kind of loose, so it needs replaced. But anyway, yeah, vintage versus modern, and then we come into third party. Third party G.I. Joe-esque toy makers, they make O-ring figures. They make the original styled O-ring figures with different paint schemes. This is one of them right here. This guy is an O-ring construction battle android trooper with a different paint scheme, but he has that original vintage construction. The construction that all these people love, that I love. And everyone has different reasons for why they love that O-ring construction. Personally, I look at these figures, and even though I greatly enjoy them, I really like the detail of modern figures a lot more. Modern figures have so much more detail and more accessories and whatnot. That was one of the things that drove me to buy certain figures when I was a kid. How many accessories does it come with? Does this guy just come with a rifle, or does he come with like a rifle, a rocket launcher, and all this other stuff? I would typically go for the one that came with more accessories, unless it was Python Patrol and Tiger Force. Those, I was more concerned with the appearance. I thought it was cool. The sub-team aspect was the cool factor for it, to me. But O-ring versus modern, it's a... you have guys out there, as I've mentioned in videos before, there are people out there who are O-ring or nothing. They don't want it if it's not O-ring. They won't buy any new production G.I. Joe stuff if it's not going to be made just like the originals. And you also have people who don't want anything to do with the vintage style O-ring figures. They want those modern figures because that's what they enjoy, which is what it all really comes down to, is what you enjoy as an individual. So, collecting mint on card versus loose, go with both. Go with what you enjoy as a collector. Don't try to tell somebody else that they're wrong for what they want to collect. Don't try to tell somebody that, collecting loose is junk. I have friends that I like to give a hard time and call them, you guys play with like loose junk toys, and they're a waste of time and shit like that. But I'm not. I don't mean that. I won't say that to a complete stranger, and I won't say that to a new collector. If you're watching this and you're curious about getting into collecting G.I. Joe, collect what you want. Collect what you enjoy. If you enjoy looking at these figures in packages, buy them. If you enjoy collecting loose figures that you can play with your kids, or that you can get out there and pose for photo shoots, buy them. Get out there and do what you enjoy, because that's what a lot of people in this hobby seem to have forgotten. It's about enjoyment. It's about what the individual collector enjoys about the hobby. And it's about the fact that all of us as a community enjoy one thing in common together. And that's a love of these little plastic crack action figures. And that's exactly what they are. They are plastic crack. It's, collecting these things gets addictive. There's times where, I'll be honest, there's times where I want to sell off my entire collection. I want to get rid of it. I want to stop messing with it. I want to stop looking at it. But, that usually lasts about, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm like, I could never do that. But that's really what the hobby's about. It's about what you as the individual enjoys. So don't get discouraged if you see somebody saying that one thing is better than another, because maybe that's true for them, but what's true for them doesn't necessarily apply to you. I hope that you guys hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more videos. I've got more coming to you. And remember, Yo Joe.